Hello, welcome back to my channel, chesscom. Today's video is going to be the 3 knights defense. So, this is going to be part of the learn the openings, and this is very similar to the 4 knights. So, hopefully, you can kind of get the same ideas between this, and hopefully we'll be able to, use those ideas to maybe make this opening feel a little bit easier, and it's very similar, obviously, in that matter. So, what actually is the 3 knights? Now it's going to be, if you know how the other one was, obviously this is all normal, as you can have this obviously with the Petrov, you can do the Philidor, as we've already gone through, but instead of anything like this, we're actually going to now play knight to c3. So this is obviously, what does this do right now? Well, these knights are controlling the center pawns that black will be able to push to. So obviously d5 and e5, also protecting this e4 pawn at the minute alone. But what we're going to be doing is trying to do a few things. We're going to be trying controlling the center, and later on d4, we're going to develop pieces just naturally, just normal, one of these 2 squares for this, and again, probably something like one of these 2 squares for the bishop. And then the queen can probably go over to e2, maybe even d2, and then you want to castle kingside very quickly. I don't think you can castle queenside really. You can if you want, a bit different, but that's up to you in my opinion. Obviously the main thing is it can quickly go into the 4 knights with this. So if they do play this, then obviously you're in the 4 knights, and it's what we've gone over, and immediately I would say do this. So this is going to be a very similar sort of video, but it's always good to just go over each sort of opening here. Now, what we have here is also we want to keep a flexible pawn structure. So what I mean here is obviously d4 is good, but after a while we might want to say, well, let's actually say that, like they play a different move. We want to get our bishop to here, and then maybe push d3 to have this pawn structure like this. And then soon maybe somehow get f3 out after casting and get our bishop in that sort of London position from the pyramid. So, as I've said before here, that white will often follow up with bishop c4, bishop b5, and d4. Always that d4 is the central break, and then obviously bishop c4 is the Italian style version, and b5 is the Lopez style. So all good so far. Now, what actually are the common black responses? So obviously, other than this, we won't go over this because we've obviously done another video. If you want to know what that video is, go and watch that after this one. Now, bishop b4 is one of the other main moves, and the reason for this is that it obviously pins the knight out of pressure, but it's also going to just give ideas from the Roy Lopez, actually, how this happens as white. So I'm going to be using this a lot, and actually very good because it kind of stops this push as well for a little time to cause issues like this. So that might put you at a little bit of a different thing. What I would say here is actually almost do this and allow this sort of thing maybe. And to be fair, if you want to, you can actually allow this if you wanted to, because if you never get to this position, then it's actually maybe not so bad because you can get the rook on the open file. So there's always stuff like that you could try and get. It's not always the best. And actually the only other real move they're going to have to do is g6. So obviously we already know what's going to happen here. They're going to finish with the bishop, and we're very quickly going to see a game like this. So this is really the normal position you want to look at, and it's just dead even in my opinion. And what I would say in this sort of position is try and aim for the bishop h6 sort of idea. I would say there's nothing really else you can go for. Maybe bring the knight into the centre. You already got that pawn break. Try and get the queen side push with the pawns, everything like that. So, what are the pros and cons of this opening? Well, it's easy to learn. It's probably most people's first few openings. The 4 knights, the 2 knights, 3 knights, 4 knights sort of thing is always people's most of the time first opening. As it's e4, and to do the first thing you're supposed to do in the opening, principles, which is knights before bishops. That's what some people do. Now, solid structure, as we can see here, everything's solid. If you are more or less a beginner or intermediate, I would say in this, obviously, the chess guide we're doing, this would be a very good opening to use all of that stuff we've talked about onto this. I think this gives you a very good basis, really, of everything we've talked about in the opening to do. So, because this has actually everything we've got connected pieces already. We've got a pawn structure, we've got castle, we've got all of our pieces out very good. Just got to get our rooks out, which isn't very hard. We're going to create a queenside attack, and we're already planning, which is very good as white, in my opinion. And obviously, because it's easy to learn, also there's quite low theory compared to stuff like, Italian and all of that stuff. So, the cons, it can become symmetrical, especially after they could just play the 4 knights, and it could be a very drawn game. And it's very not aggressive at all. We're not playing like a gambit or anything. It's just, it's going to be something like this. We're actually very defensive. We've not got a piece below the 5th rank here. Or all the pieces are below the 5th rank, should I say. So we can do that. And I would say if played accurately for black, I would say it's very equal. Just in this position, maybe if you had, say, 10 more moves, it could still be even. But that's with best play, and also you can obviously play different things that we might not be talking about here. Like maybe instead of doing this, maybe you want to all of a sudden try and move your knight over to e2 and then go to g3 for some reason. Maybe try and play all of that. So, who should play it, really, in my opinion? So obviously, as we said about the beginner and intermediate players, I would say if you like the sort of classical development, knights for bishops on, these sort of squares, get your queen out after castling quickly, all of that. And instead of like wild tactic games, and you prefer strategic games, because obviously this is all strategy, because you're placing the pieces in the right squares. And also, without heavy memorization, this is just a reliable opening. So, that is going to be it for today's video. That was the 3 knights opening. So thank you, and bye-bye.